Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Juliana. I am a PhD candidate in sociology studying distributed autonomous systems. The idea is to study human-machine cognitive interaction in distributed autonomous technology to try to understand what kind of collective behavior emerges from the human-machine interaction in distributed systems, social technical systems. And today's topic is socially distributed cognition. Of course, I've been looking at this topic more generally in the context of distributed cognition, but this term, socially distributed cognition, is the first time I came across it. So I thought it would be interesting to just give a hint on the topic here on the channel to keep the record. Socially distributed cognition is in a chapter that I found in the book called The Emergent Organization, Communication as its Site and Surface, a book that was written by James R. Taylor and Elizabeth John J. von Every. Hope I've pronounced that correctly. So it's a chapter, and then socially distributed cognition is somewhat of a subtopic within the chapter. But they are speaking of socially distributed cognition as a new model of organization, right? They're comparing models of cognition, particularly symbolicist and connectionist models. And socially distributed cognition follows the connectionist model of cognition, which is you see the cognizers, right? The agents of cognizers, be them neurons or people or technical cognizers, as these sort of network assemblage of cognitive agents. And this is the context in which socially distributed cognition is observed in this chapter. So individuals in this organization, and when we speak of organization, let's keep in mind, it's a networked form of organization. So individuals, they're not the barriers of information about the environment per se, but the information about the environment that they're embedded in is actually a product of their interactions. So the image of the environment, their knowing of the environment, their understanding of the environment is actually a product of, has actually been negotiated through the cognitive interactions in this environment. So the understanding of the environment, the information about the environment is more complex than the information that each agent would have in this socially distributed cognition, right? So information is constructed not in the brain of the individual within the social organization, networked organization, but through a collaborative social process. And the result transcends the bound of individual knowledge. This here I'm just citing. So the knowledge is more of the environment, how individuals or agents, they're embedded in in environments, and understanding that environment is important so that the individual can act and cope with the conditions of the environment, and therefore realize its existence in the environment, because it has to respond to stimulation from the environment, of course. So in socially distributed cognition, if we look at this as a form of organization, then the knowledge about the environment is not contained in the knowledge of each individual of this networked organization. So let's bring this to today's context, in a social technical context. What we understand about the environment is not what the environment actually is, because the image and the understanding of the environment is being created by a negotiation of all of the actors that are interpreting and cognitively interacting within this environment, and pushing to a social technical context, because now algorithms, they also have a kind of agency in coming up with this interpretation, then the image of our environment today, of our social technical reality, is a negotiation between human machine cognitive agency. So understanding this knowledge is so complex that no individual person or no individual algorithm can actually understand what's going on. Not the algorithms understand, but I think I'm trying to get across the point that individual agents in this networked organization do not contain the information about the environment per se, but that the information is a collective product, a collective performance. It emerges out of the collective interaction. So this follows a connectionist logic, right? You have simple actors spread in a network, and this is a form of organization. And from this organization, a collective mind emerges, right? A collective form of intelligence. In this chapter, they use Hutchings' Cognition in the Wild. This is a book. Hutchings did a study on navigation practice, so how the collective of people in a ship, for instance, work collectively for the navigation system. It's not like it's a collective performance. And then he says that to observe the chapter points to how observing this kind of interaction would require three focuses to observe information processing in this network, in this socially distributed cognitive network, right? One is you have to understand what is being computed. What is the system? What does the system do, and why it does it? What kind of knowledge is trying to emerge from? Is the system operating to produce? How the information is represented and transformed. So this is on the basics of exchange, right? Because we sense information. Individual agents or actors, they sense information from the environment. And this kind of sensorial input is mediated, right? And this is important to understand as well. And information doesn't have one form, so it transitions from, electrical signals to biological signaling, right? You have synapses in your brains, for example. This is a good example of how involves different kinds of information processing mechanisms. You have the electrical together with the physiological processing of information. In a computer, you have the electrical signaling, but then it needs to be mediated through semantic forms of information. So you have language and you have visual interpretations of the information that's running through the hardware mechanism, right? And then the third point is how the representation and its transformation are realized physically. What kind of media? So, as I've mentioned, you have the brain, you have the neurons, you have the computers, you have, people, as organizational agents within a larger networked system. So intelligence is not in the instrument, but in the interaction between the instrument and the person involving it. This is basically, when we're speaking of social technical systems, this observation here, which is on page 204 of the book, is speaking about the interaction between, the cognitive interaction between people and machines, and that the information, the intelligence is not neither on the person or nor on the machine, but intelligence is a product of that interaction. And that this product, emerges out of computational processes and social processes. So this is the concept of socially distributed cognition. It's a short audio today, thank God, right? But I think it's there is a lot more to be explored here. There's a book that's more recent. The Emergent Organization was published in 2000, but there's a more recent work done by Catherine Hayles in 2017 that is specifically about the socially distributed cognition, technosocial cognition. So the next one to be explored in this context should probably be Catherine Hayles. The book is titled Unthought on the Power of Cognition or something like that. But anyway, that was it for today. Just the concept, just throwing it out there. Any kind of contribution you can comment or, yeah. See you next time.